Love is about interconnectedness and binding. It's what makes, a organic thing organic. It's what makes life possible. My cells cooperate and they form a hand. Different kinds of cells, all different kinds of protein structures, which can be analysed by science. They all collaborate and work together. The heart, the blood system, the brain, the neurons. I am a product of love in a force field that keeps me as an organic whole being. And so are you, and so are all living beings. And countries are too. Countries that are made from love are there because we have bonds across different valleys and different dialects and different towns and cities. We love each other enough to stay together. What's at risk over Brexit is by these largely English voters saying, "Oh, we don't like Europe, we hate it," and being egged on by their elite manipulators, the Rees-Moggs, the Boris Johnsons and co. They're creating a narrative of hate instead of a narrative of love. And it's tragic and dangerous for European stability and well-being to have a narrative of hate. You can't base a civilization on a narrative of hate. It only lasts so far. It takes you to the edge and it always ends in war. It's what Hitler used, it's what every dictator has ever used throughout the beginning of time, to whip up a rhetorical energy of hatred against the other. Well, St. Paul and his letter to the Galatians says, no, that's not the way to go. We have to stick with the doing of goodness. We have to stick with the patient tolerance of living in the light of truth, in living in the light of spirit. Paul ends the letter by saying what matters is new creation. It's that sense of being in touch with your own creativity that actually is the ethical cornerstone of all ethical judgments. My concern about Britain as it breaks up, as Scotland goes its own way, Northern Ireland goes back into Ireland, hard borders appear between Scotland and England, and I'm absolutely sure Wales will eventually separate from England and go back to its Celtic heritage and rejoin the European Union. And bless them, they'd be very welcome. The whole thing will become a legalist nightmare as lawyers and policemen battle it out. And where's love in all that? Love is the victim. Love will be crucified. Whereas I want my country to stand up for love against these forces of darkness and ignorance. I'm a lover of wisdom. I'm a philosopher. And, I'm that through and beyond death. Just as Paul was sworn to the love of wisdom, and so was Christ, so am I, and so was John Dee, and so are all the true Samuels of history. We can't not take the path of love. And I'm so disturbed to see my compatriots. I've taught in Britain for many years. I thought I'd taught quite well, actually, and sowed the seeds of love and the love of wisdom. But so many people are acting as if they love hatred, as if they love ignorance. Gosh, where are my fellow teachers speaking out? Where are my fellow academics and colleagues and other philosophers speaking out against this monstrosity? We need to amplify the call to love, which is the positive reason for Bremain. I love Scotland, England, and Wales. I've travelled all over them. I love Europe. I love France. I love Spain. I love Italy. I love them all. Germany, Switzerland. It's an organic unity, this amazing continent we live in. Let's not ruin that. Let's hand it on to our grandchildren and their grandchildren so that they can also enjoy the fruits of going to Pisa for the first time, or going to the Vatican libraries I've done, or going to Salzburg, that magical city that gave us Mozart, or the other treasure troves all over Europe. Okay, so another thing I want to say, I'm doing a talk. There's an important event coming up at the Peace Museum here on the 22nd of July. So that's like a week tomorrow, in honour of St Mary Magdalene, whose day is coming up, July 22nd. And as those of you know who've listened to my talks and my YouTube sites and read my books, you know that I published a bibliography of Mary Magdalene studies. I've created the Mary Magdalene Studies Association here 3 years ago. And this will be our 3rd annual meeting. We always meet on her day, July 22nd. And it's going to be a feast. We have people coming from far and wide to share their thinking and their research into Mary Magdalene, who's a very interesting character. She was the first witness of the resurrection. She was a close friend and disciple and possibly consort of Jesus. The text is ambiguous, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if they were certainly what I would call a wisdom affair. It might have been, something very intense. There's some very great historical reconstructions done of their relationship. There's some wonderful novels that have come out. There's the whole Dan Brown novel, and then there's Marion Kunstler's book, The Moon Under Her Feet, which reconstructs Mary Magdalene's life as a priestess in the Asherah tradition of Jerusalem, that she was maybe the arch-priestess of the goddess in Jerusalem, officially sanctioned. So lots of very interesting things, and we'll be discussing this on July 22nd. People are welcome to attend. And in the couple of days before that, July 20th, 21st, I'll be involved in a project at the local abbey here, Abbey Preferable, which was an ancient abbey founded in the Angevin times, when Eleanor of Aquitaine was the ultimate duchess in charge of this whole territory of France in which I am, in Aquitaine. Now, that abbey was quite important in its own day for a few hundred years. It's survived the wars of religion, but unfortunately when the Protestants and Catholics all started fighting each other, it was quite dangerous to be in the wrong place, in the wrong religion, and it was attacked from both sides. But what we're doing is reclaiming it. It's now a public space owned by the commune of Beitet, where I live. And we're having a couple of days of events, re-invoking the ancient life of the abbey. And I'm going to be there doing some readings as a spiritual, not monk, but as it were a scholar, a wandering scholar. I'll be taking the name of Abelard for the purposes of that event. If you want to come along on the afternoons of the 20th or 21st of July, you can meet Abelard down at the Abbey Preferable here in La Creuse. And I will be interpreting passages of the Bible from French and possibly English, explaining them in the way that Abelard would have done. He was a very great mind. He could see things from all angles. He'd studied Aristotle in depth. He was the first French or European Christian to come to grips with the problem that the Bible on the one hand says certain things, and yet Aristotle said other things logically, and he gave us a system of logic. And how can we sort out what is true and what is right and what is wrong when the Bible seems to self-contradict itself? It says in some parts that Christ said you must never get a divorce, but then other parts it seems to imply that no divorce is okay. What are we to make of these contradictions? So Abelard wrote a book called Sic et Non, Yes and No, in which he analysed all these contradictions. And he basically came down on the side of reason. He said, ultimately, we need to develop a logic that can reconcile these paradoxical statements. But reason has to be our guide. And we need scientific method. In a sense, he was a progenitor of scientific method, applied to humanistic studies. So Abelard was, one of my heroes as a young man, as an early philosopher, and remains so. So, yeah, I mean, if Abelard were alive today, he would make a list, yes and no, of all the good and bad things against Brexit, which is exactly what I did, by the way, in 2016. He'd work out the maths, and he'd see the column of bad things that might come from Brexit is vastly superior and outweighs the column of possible good things. So logically, we shouldn't do Brexit. It's absolutely as simple as that. And that's what my Centre for Bremain Studies is pointing out. I want to come next to discuss my attempt to mediate in the conflict around the world, particularly in relation to Iran the US and Israel and this rhetoric of hate speech. It's very disturbing when you see, as I say, heads of state, people like Trump and Netanyahu and Theresa May's indulged in it too, and British warships are patrolling around the Gulf, throwing their weight about, almost egging the Iranians into creating a military confrontation. This is all extremely dangerous. We live in a world of nuclear weapons now, not bows and arrows. And my mother, who was a tireless campaigner against nuclear weapons, would be turning in her grave at the brinkmanship of these people. So there has to be a mediation, and I've proposed, because I run and set up and organise the first multi-faith mediation service in the world. It's still running. We deal with multi-faith and multicultural conflict resolution, and this is a classic example. The Americans just don't get the Iranian people, and vice versa. They both think of the other as some sort of demon from hell. From the Iranian perspective, the Americans are just totally without conscience. They have no ethics. They've separated all spirituality off their country. They have no religious instruction in their classrooms. There's an anti-religious climate in America. And religion has been relegated to something private. It's what you do in your own home, with your own family, you go to your own church and so on. Now that's regarded as that's correct and right for them. The trouble is that then the public space of politics, Congress, becomes value-free, it becomes ethical, neutral, and then becomes a jamboree for liars, fools, and corrupt people who just buy influence. That's what we're seeing, isn't it? Now the Iranian view is very different. The Iranian view is, no, you should have a public morality. You should have this thing. They call it Islam, but it doesn't matter what you call it. It's just a common agreement about what are the ethical norms according to which the society should operate. They take those from the Quran. They take them from the Shia canon of very, very enlightened sages who descended from Muhammad and Ali and Fatima and brought teachings of very, very great profundity to these people. And the Shia tradition is a highly sophisticated intellectual tradition, which has struggled with what is morality and so on. Now, sometimes they get things wrong, and I'm not saying the Iranian regime hasn't sometimes, persecuted people and locked up people it shouldn't have done. And I know friends who've been in Iranian jails, and it's very, very sad. But on the whole, at least they're trying to find a society, to found a society based on some kind of ethical or spiritual norms. They tolerate Christianity. There are churches all over Iran. There are churches in Tehran. You can go to Catholic Mass or Anglican Church. It's a free society in that respect. There are Jewish synagogues in Iran. You can go and worship freely if you're Jewish, and you're not persecuted. There are, other religions. Zoroastrians have temples all over Iran. So it's a very highly sophisticated culture. The Americans need to learn this. Go and visit them. Go and talk to them. Don't bomb them, whatever you do, because that's just such a retrograde step, which will really annoy anybody which has morality to heart. The Iranians are trying their best to create a fair and just society based on Islamic models. Now, in my commentary on the Quran, which I've been trying to say, okay, let's take that we use the Quran as the bedrock of society in countries that are mainly Islamic. But the question is then how we interpret that Quran, how we study it. Muhammad himself was a genius, was a visionary. His followers, supported him, or they wouldn't have done if he was just an idiot making up stuff. He wasn't. And American people that go around saying Muhammad was a crazy lunatic and, all Muslims are evil, have never studied the thing. They've never studied Islam. They've never studied the history and origins of this amazing spiritual tradition. My compatriots, like Thomas Carlyle and others, did. Goethe as well. The European mind, we studied Islam in depth, and we realised we can do peace with it. That's why there was great trade between the British and the Europeans and the Ottoman Empire. That's why the Sufis of the Balkans and so on influenced European thought. That's why Dante was influenced by them. That's why the great Samoas of Europe learned to love and respect the Muslims, okay? And vice versa. And let that love and respect dominate our relations, and let what we should be doing is helping the Sunnis and the Shias make peace, not siding with the Sunnis or the Wahhabis. The Wahhabis, by the way, are not real Sunnis, they're just fake fanatics. The Wahhabis are extremists, they're not authentic Sunnis. The Ottoman Empire was a Sunni empire. The Wahhabis destroyed it with tragic support from the British, who were then taken over by deluded warmongers who thought that, I don't even want to go into World War One, but it was a total mistake. It should never have happened. Anyway, how can we mediate between these conflicts? We have to find a place of neutrality. As Archimedes said, give me a place to stand and I can move the world. With mediation, it's possible if you adopt complete neutrality. Now, I have been influenced by the sceptical tradition of philosophy of Pyrrho of Elis and the Jains, and I adopt the position of transcendental epoche when it comes to conflict resolution. This enables me to be equidistant between American ideology and Iranian ideology. I can calibrate and harmonize these polarizations and tensions by asking them both to go to transcendental truth. Now, I note the candidate for the American elections, Marianne Williamson, is saying something very similar. We have to get back to love as an American society. And she's rightly critiquing this Trump bellicosity of let's go to war against Iran. She's seeing through that, as is anyone with any intelligence in the US country and population. So I hope the voices of people like Marianne Williamson and Bernie Sanders and other critics of let's go to war in the Middle East type people will be amplified over coming months, and that they should really be locked up behind in jails, those warmongers. There should be they've reneged on an international treaty involving Iran agreeing to give up nuclear weapons, and that treaty should be renewed. The European Union, the new foreign minister of the European Union, a man from Spain, should be negotiating, mediating, and getting everyone back round the table, as Federica Mogherini did, the great European foreign minister who's just stepping down from Italy, to ensure that the world doesn't go down the brink of some horrendous nuclear war process. Let's use European good officers as mediators to bring about a truce and a truth settlement between the Iranian and the Americans and the Israelis, which everybody can win from. It's complicated, it involves many factors, but it can be done. Saudi Arabia has to be part of that conversation because of the war in Yemen and the war in Syria. I would like to see peace breaking out on this planet instead of these little wars bubbling around, which kill people and damage and injure. Countless millions of people are dying of famine, starvation, illness, etc., caused by these conflicts. It really is time to say enough is enough. I mean, I was tasked with the job of creating a peace institute at the University of London, where I did my degree and my PhD, and I'd still love to see a full-fledged, funded, Institute of Peace Studies in London with all the backing and support that it would deserve. Meanwhile, I'm just doing what I can on a shoestring, and will continue to do so, because to me it's a moral task, it's a moral pursuit, as Paul says, go on doing good as long as you have to. So I want to end by saying that I'm also doing this work in the context of the World Intellectual Forum, which seems to be a very worthy project I've got involved with. Colleagues in India and Russia and America and elsewhere have created a forum for intellectuals equivalent to the World Economic Forum, that we come together annually. We're going to be meeting in Delhi in December, discussing world ideas and how we can find a blueprint for harmony between our respective cultures, religions, economic systems, etc. Join us. The World Intellectual Forum is open for intellectuals, but we all have an intellect. We all have a divine mind, unless we're completely brain dead and robotized. So, if you have a few sparks of intellect left in there, please get in touch. We can work with you. And it's about bringing scientific intelligence in harmony with spiritual intelligence. This project of the World Intellectual Forum includes both spiritual seers and sages and scientists, and how we can bridge the gap between these two methodologies, because although Bacon was a genius, and I love the advancement of learning, he did say in that book, I'm leaving out spirituality and religion, it's too dangerous. 1624, it was too dangerous. I'm saying when we do the next edition of the advancement of learning in 2024 and the years leading up to that, which we need to start this project soon, folks, we should include spiritual matters and interfaith matters and the discussion of religions. And that's why I've drawn up my periodic table of the world's religious traditions, which I've shared on previous occasions, because that's a scientific tool for trying to apply Baconian empirical scientific methodology to the comparative study of global philosophy and religions. So in the next edition of the Advancement of Learning, this should be included. Both what we know and what we don't know, and how we can find out what we don't know. Did Muhammad go to Hira? Was he influenced by Manichaean thought? Did he meet Manichaeans? We don't know. It's possible. There are traces in the Quran, as my commentary on the Quran reveals. How can we know? How can we find out? Well, we can work with archaeologists who've worked in Hira. We can dig down and find a little tablet that says in Arabic writing, Muhammad was here. That would be nice. The Arabic alphabet that the Quran is written in was invented by the Lakhmid Arabs in Hira. So it stands to reason, and a lot of them were Nestorians and Manichaeans. There was a lot of Zoroastrians in Hira. It was a very vibrant kind of California of its age, like the San Francisco of the Middle East. I'd love to find its lost library. I have a friend who is actually an expert in Manichaean studies at the moment, Yuri Stoyanov, who is a colleague from SOAS, School of Oriental African Studies at the University of London. He was due to speak at our conference on esoteric traditions of the Pyrenees, but he can't come because he's in Baghdad studying Gnosticism in Iraq to try and interview people and record their views before, if in case this war breaks out. Because all mayhem is going to break out in the Middle East. Isn't that tragic that this is why I don't like wars and bombs, because they destroy the savants, they destroy libraries, they destroy the living Gnostic holders of wisdom. The World Intellectual Forum, anyway, is for people of that caliber who are able to get involved in creating a space for freedom of intellectual discourse, that we don't get chopped up into pieces. This is what annoys me about Jamal Khashoggi's death. How dare those people chop up an intellectual like that? It's utterly scandalous. These people should be brought to justice. I'm delighted the new mayor of Istanbul has been confirmed in his election. He's a moderate. He's an intelligent guy. He wouldn't allow chopping up on his watch in any embassy. And nor would I. Philosophers of the world unite. We have nothing to lose but the ignorance of those around us, I would say, to paraphrase Marx. And finally, I want to end with a thought about peace, because obviously I set up this Peace Institute at the University of London. It's still going. And we do an annual newsletter, which I'm about to publish and send to members and colleagues. If you want a copy, just contact me. And I list the kind of 50 projects we're doing. It's a vast amount of work here. You're welcome to get involved, come and help. One of the projects is about truth. This proposal for a bill of parliamentary veracity. It's potentially one of the most important projects that parliamentarians should have to tell the truth. And if they lie, they lose office. We cannot have trust in politicians in any country who habitually lie. And if they're exposed as lying, they should resign. And that should be, and a similar bill should be adopted in the US Congress, in the Indian Parliament, in the Israeli Knesset, in every parliamentary assembly in the world. And that would begin to move us out of this terrible Kali Yuga era of lies, when Druid, who's the opponent of Seisham, the opponent of Ahura Mazda, the lie is the force that we're up against. So the only power we have is the power of truth, which is symbolised by this Druid peace sword behind me. And searching for that power of truth will help bring about what the Hindus call rightly Sat Yuga. Gandhi said the peace worker is a satyagrahi. It's someone that grasps onto truth. We need our parliamentarians to at least do us the honour of at least swearing an oath that they will try and tell the truth. At the moment, they hide behind a mask of lawyers and power and privilege that, it's impossible to tell which of them is lying and which of them is telling the truth. They have become so accustomed to mendacity, it's like the very tea they drink. So no, that's all got to change. If philosophers, if the saints and martyrs of this planet, if all the great sages of the Shia, Islamic, Sunni, Christian, Buddhist, Druidical tradition, the combined spiritual energy of all of them come together in that cutting point of truth and adherence to the standards of truth. So, and that's true in our personal relationships, in our professional lives, but in our political lives, it's absolutely crucial. So, please help, get involved with our Parliamentary Veracity Project. What I want is someone to help in every capital city where there's a parliamentary assembly to start seminars on this topic. I ran 30 meetings in the UK House of Lords on this. You just need to find a friendly Lord or MP or something to work with. And there are always a few good ones in every parliament who understand what I'm saying, who would resonate with truth discourse, so to speak. I've met people of honour and integrity in all countries and cultures who value truth. That's all that this, at the end of the day, that's all that this is about. And Brexit, my dear friends, I'm sorry, is not based on truth, it's based on lies. We know that now. I knew it at the time, I'd figured it out. It's taken the institutions of the state in Britain, it's taken, I don't know what happened to the Prime Minister Theresa May, she seemed like an intelligent woman, but the truth gene was taken out of her. I think these people, when they become, get into these power places, they are put in some kind of a screening process whereby the truth gene is taken out of them. Well, we have to reverse that process. The joke of someone like Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister, I mean, that's such the complete mismatch because he's the prime liar. He's countlessly, constantly lied and acted mendaciously. So, praise be to God, he won't last more than like a few seconds if he does get, even for one moment, to that place of responsibility. Otherwise, my dear friends, the UK is doomed. Our country will be something in the history books. I still think there is truth energy left in it and that it's worth struggling for and striving for. But we have to see off those kind of lying types that are trying to hijack our country and trying to destabilise the whole of Europe. And the world. Okay, I'm going to finish there. Thank you for listening. I'm going to finish, if I may, with a poem, because at the end of the day, I think poetry is very important for advancing, truth, ultimately. And I'm going to try and choose a poem that's not too long, because otherwise I'll outweigh your patience. Okay, this is a poem I wrote from my 6th volume of poems. I published this back in 2015. So they're poems I wrote between 2013 and 2015, and Okay, so this is a poem. I mentioned the Book of Enoch and I mentioned the Fallen Angels. Well, I love that book. It's a great story. Read it. Listen to my commentary. This is a poem about the leader of the Fallen Angels, who's called Shemjaza. And it's a great, heroic, epic story. He leads the angels to rebel against God. And, you can read the Book of Enoch to find out what happens next. But he causes a lot of trouble. And as I say, I think that, to me, the Brexit project is like a Shemjaza project. He's causing trouble. He's declaring war on goodness and just generally trying to destabilise and ruin everything. And so by writing this poem, I'm trying to head off that revolt. I wrote this poem before the Brexit referendum even, when I was visiting Istanbul. I think it was 2014. And I was musing and meditating. I also went to Troy and to Miletus and other great ancient sites in Turkey. So this poem is called Semjaza in Reflective Mood. Be called, be loved, be calmed. Tremulous trembling of the mind leaves of knowing. On what branch or which arm of which tree do they arise? White orchards of fruit arise when we gather to absorb your subtle tasks under the sign of the mysteries. Are you here too, then, brother? Are you aware of us? I searched eons ago, my friends, while the universe was being made. I surrendered. I held my palms open, upright, and said your praises. When water was being conceived as a liquid flowing thing, to delight the hot painfulness of being, I ran my angel hands through its translucent silkiness, and something bubbled up within me. When I questioned why all this was happening, and the doubt of doubt entered my soul, that's when, momentarily, I fell. Somewhere in another universe, bodies were trembling from womb to tomb in an endless round. But the light shone all at once from every direction, from a source within and without, from a place that is at once a beginning and an ending. I put on my best clothes. I preened my wings. I let dew brush down my hair. I sang gratitude songs, which I embedded into every particle of light. I sang whenever the dancing particles were also singing your praises, as if an answering echo. Or was I their echo? Who was source and who effect? Who was the drum and who was